The effects of climate change on agriculture can be disastrous, as it can result in lower crop yields and nutritional quality due to drought, heat waves and flooding, as well as increase in pest and plant disease. The effects of climate change on agriculture is not only a Nigeria challenge, it happens world over. Farmers are used to dealing with weather, but climate change is making it harder by altering temperature and rainfall patterns, and this can lead to food insecurity. This is where we derive our topic for discussion on Saturday Discourse today: the impact of climate change on agriculture. Our guest is an ebullient and dogged Director Forecasting Response and Mitigation, FEMA. Florence Wenegieme shall be enlightening us about the topic. More so, the need to give helping hands to the less privileged members of the society was highlighted in a report we will bring to you in the course of this bulletin. Many thanks for joining us on Saturday Discourse. Take a break from your activities this evening, sit tight, and enjoy the Unity Station with yours truly, Frama Panyi. We begin with the news segment. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the postponement of the 2023 population and housing census, earlier scheduled for May this year, to a date to be determined by the incoming administration. In a statement issued by Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed, the president gave the approval after meeting with some members of the Federal Executive Council, member and chairman of the National Population Commission, and his team at the presidential villa in Abuja on Friday. In arriving at the decision to postpone the census, the meeting reiterated the critical need for the conduct of a population and housing census 17 years after the last census to collect up-to-date data that will drive the developmental goals of the country and improve the living standards of the Nigerian people. The president noted that with the completion of the enumeration area demarcation of the country, conduct and first and second pretest, the recruitment and training of ad hoc workers, procurement of personal digital assistants. He also commended the methodology being put in place by the Commission to conduct accurate and reliable census, especially the massive deployment of technology that is capable of delivering world-class census and laying a sustainable basis for future censuses. The president further directed the Commission to continue with preparations for the conduct of the 2023 population and housing census in order to sustain the gains already recorded and provide the basis for the incoming administration to consolidate on these achievements. The meeting was attended by the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, Minister of State National Planning, Mr. Clem Agba, and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. And the federal government says the first batch of Nigerian evacuees from Sudan who have arrived are expected to be airlifted to Nigeria in the coming hours by the Nigerian Air Force and Air Peace Airline. A joint statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and that of Humanitarian Disaster Management and Social Development says first batch of 13 buses conveying 637 evacuees have arrived and
the identified safe borders of Aswan, Egypt, and are undergoing necessary documentation and clearance before admission into the Egyptian territory for their eventual evacuation to Nigeria. The statement adds movement of the second batch of 29 buses will commence Saturday, 29 April 2023. The evacuees are therefore advised to be at the designated locations with only one luggage. The statement says, contrary to insinuations on social media, embassy staff are very much on ground in Khartoum to coordinate the evacuation exercise to the very end. The students and other Nigerians awaiting evacuation from Khartoum, Sudan, are therefore advised to cooperate with them in order to ensure orderliness and proper documentation while embarking on the buses. This will go a long way in speeding up the process and avoiding unnecessary delays with documentation and clearance upon arrival. The federal government empathizes with affected Nigerians. Maintaining order amidst the desperate situation remains crucial to getting all interested Nigerians out of the war zone in record time before the expiration of the ceasefire, which has been extended by 72 hours. Let's take you to Nasarawa State, where the state governor, Abdullahi Sule, has assured youth corps members deployed to the state of their welfare and security throughout their service year. The governor gave the assurance in a message during the swearing-in ceremony of Batch A Stream 2 orientation course in Kefi. Blessing Mfulani reports.
Oath of allegiance administered on the corps members by the Chief Judge of Nasarawa State, Justice Aisha Bashir Aliyu, represented by Justice Isa Kana, officially kicked off the commencement of their mandatory one-year service to their fatherland. Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule, in a message, assured the corps members of their safety throughout their service year, with a promise of building a 3,000 capacity multipurpose hall and staff hostels to accommodate camp officials.
I implore you to maintain calm rules and regulations, shun all forms of vices capable of tarnishing your image and that of the scheme, your families, as well as your institution of learning.
Nasarawa State Coordinator NYSC Abdullahi Jikamshi enjoined the corps members to participate actively in camp activities and take advantage of the skills acquisition and entrepreneurship development program for them to be self-reliant.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish to inform you that the purpose of the orientation course is to equip corps members with practical, social, and leadership skills, which will enable them face the challenges of the service year ahead.
A total number of 1,936 youth corps members are deployed to Nasarawa State for 2023 Batch A Stream 2 exercise. From Kefi, Blessing Mfulani, NTA News.
To agriculture now. Farmers and stakeholders in agriculture have expressed mixed reaction to the early rains in some parts of the country. This year, as earlier predicted by NIMET, Rose Mary Morteleng Bilal examines impact of rainfall on agricultural produce.
Early preparations for the farming season result in good cultivation, planting and bumper harvest at the end of the day. Weather predictions and early warning signals by Nigerian Meteorological Agency has been the required guideline for this year's farming season.
As you know, agricultural production requires adequate planning and management. By planning, meaning that you have to take right decisions at the right time. A right decision on when to plant, when to apply inputs, and then when to carry out day-to-day management activities on the farmland.
Some citizens are, however, expressing fears of possible early season of rains and poor harvest. Over time, this phenomenon has never been good for planting, as it seizes suddenly and destroys all crops in the soil that were planted earlier.
From the news, we heard that there's going to be much rain this year. So with the news, definitely we need to change to adapt to what we hear in order to not to affect our farming season.
The area that it has been affected by the climate change, I will shift from that area to another site so that I can get a good harvest.
The implication of this, according to agricultural experts, is that it will result in financial and economic losses to farmers, and therefore Farmers are advised to delay planting their crops in order not to plant twice.
The appeal to farmers is that they should please go for this information. And the farmers should send feedback.
And if you plant a crop that is expected to have shorter rainfall and you put it for a longer rainfall, then also it's going to be affected. So this is the system that the method that the farmers should follow religiously to ensure that they plant the crops that is expected of them.
Many emphasize that the prediction would help farmers, particularly those who plant tuber crops like cassava, yam, cocoyam, and potatoes. Rosemary Molteleng Bilal, NTA News.
Thank you, Rosemary, for setting the tone for this discussion. Now, joining me in the studio to discuss impact of climate change on agriculture is Florence Wenegeme, the Director of Forecasting and Response Mitigation, FCT Emergency Management Agency. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on
Yes,
tonight. Now, let's get straight into it. We're talking about the change in the weather, climate change, and its effects, impact on agriculture. And how will global food production be affected by this climate change?
Yes, one thing we have to know is that climate change has come to stay. And all we need to do is to think of how we can mitigate it or think of some other innovatives in terms of agriculture.
Okay.
And the truth is that in Nigeria, NIMET predicted that we were going to have early rainfall. And after that, there's going to be a kind of dry spell.
Okay.
So farmers were actually discouraged from planting their seedlings immediately the rains begin, because it was not going to be steady.
Okay.
So in every country, whatever you have to do with agriculture, if you pay attention to the weather forecast or to the advice of NIMET, definitely you'll be able to get over it.
Okay.
Planting of our products can only be determined when the rains begin fully. So when the rain starts fully, then you will decide on what to plant. But if immediately we get these early rains and we swing into action, start planting, and the rain ceases, then comes the dry spell. Definitely we are going to really do it at a loss.
Okay.
Because when the rain ceases, the temperature becomes high. The temperature increases, and whatever you have planted, whatever seedlings that you have planted, the heat will damage it. And that will lead you to a situation where you have to get some other seedlings that will affect you economically.
Okay.
And whatever you planted earlier on, with the hope that you're going to harvest it, you can't get it at that particular time. So the best bet is for you to always listen to the weather forecast and the outcome of the seasonal climate predictions for that year. Because climate change is something that is globally, and there's no exception. Okay. And there's nothing we can do about it than to think of how to mitigate it.
Okay. This warning by NIMET that because it affected some states, not all the states. Now, can this change in temperature and rainfall lead to longer growing seasons in some states? Because the change will affect some states and it will not affect some other states.
Of course, the weather cannot be the same in the whole country. Like in the coastal part of Nigeria, it was predicted that the rains will begin by 2nd of March. And far north, it was expected that it will start between May and June. And that is the difference. So definitely in the coastal region, they can go ahead with their planting because they have heavy rains more than the north, and that is it. So that leads us to the issue of what we plant in the north and what can be planted in the south in the coastal part of the country. So all these are determined because you cannot have the same weather situation in the whole country
At the same time.
at the same time. No. So this the weather in a particular region will determine what will be planted within that period, and that is it.
Now, this unpredictable weather change and climate change that affects agricultural activities, how can we mitigate it? Can we stop it? Can we stop it? Can we find a way to work with it? How can we mitigate it?
We cannot stop it because it has come to stay. It's nature, and you cannot change it.
How can we
All we need to do is to think of how we can mitigate it and come up with ideas, have new innovations on how to go about with agriculture to prevent food insecurity. Now, what we can do is, like in Nigeria, when we had the predictions of the early rains, it commenced early and there was a dry spell after that. So if we had listened to it, if farmers listened to that predictions, definitely they would have known that they shouldn't go out planting immediately. That is one of the mitigative measures you can take. Do not plant immediately.
Okay.
Wait until the rains become steadily. And if you must plant, then you go into irrigation. You should be prepared for irrigation. Because when it rains and you plant immediately, you should think of how you are going to provide the farm with enough water to avoid the temperature destroying your seedlings. That is it. That is one. Secondly, you can at the same time think of a different crop that you can plant within that period that doesn't really need much water. That is what we always advise farmers to do. And thirdly, when you plant and you know that the rains have ceased, you have no option than to go into getting more seedlings, which, like I said earlier on, will affect you economically. You have use your money to buy seedlings, and then it has been destroyed, depending on how many hectares of land you have. Then you have to go back again to invest in that. That is another problem. But again, you can think of getting early maturing seeds, which we always advise farmers to have, just in case when the rains become steady and there is an early season of that rain, early season, then you have to make do with early maturing seedlings. With that, you'll be able to get your crops within 2 months, 1 month, depending on the kind of seedlings that you have. Like maize, in actual sense, it can take 3 months and you have your maize. But if you have the early maturing seedlings, definitely between 6 weeks and 8 weeks, you have your maize ready.
Okay. Now, with this climate change, you just spoke about irrigation farming.
Yes.
Would you encourage farmers to just go into irrigation, especially because we cannot predict climate change? We cannot predict what the weather. Of course, NIMET has warned,
Yes.
but the unsteady change in different zones of the country, Are you encouraging farmers to venture into irrigation farming? Would you?
Yes, we have always encouraged them to go into irrigation farming because that will increase the farm produce. Our food security will be safe. We'll be sure of that. Because if we go into irrigation, which simply means that we will farm throughout the year without minding the weather. But we have to take note, even during the irrigation period, we are using the method of irrigation. When we have heavy downpour and the sea levels become high and we have flooding or so, the crops will be affected one way or the other. And erosion can affect farmlands too. So all we need to do is to pray to God that whatever method we embark on, that we will be able to succeed and provide enough food. But irrigation farming has always been encouraged by the government. Some people were even trained Yes, some of the local farmers were trained on this irrigation. Why? Because we want to have an increase in the food produce in the country so that we have enough food to avoid lack of food, to avoid hunger in the country and malnutrition.
Okay. You just spoke about training farmers, which leads me to my next question.
Yes.
Now, what measures have FEMA taken to educate farmers, in the FCT on the possible ways climate change can affect them and how they can tackle it? We have farmers in all these
Yes.
communities.
Immediately after NIMET predictions in January, we went out on early warnings. Okay. We went into the 6 area councils and we made sure we warned them on 2 issues. The issue of flooding and the issue of agriculture, especially the farmers. We advise them on the issue of irrigation. 2, we advise them on the issue of farming activities by the river banks. We discourage them from carrying out farming activities by the river banks because when there is a flood, it will easily wash your seedlings or whatever farm produce you have on your farmland. It washes it away, and that will damage your crop. Then, apart from the sensitization, it has long been realized that awareness campaigns, sensitization is the best innovative tool to handle disaster management or issues that will affect humanity of any kind. So, after NIMET predictions this year, we swung into action. We went around the 6 area councils and we advised them, we discouraged them from going out immediately after the first rain. We discouraged them from planting after the first rain. And we told them, but if you insist you want to plant immediately after the first rain, then you should be ready for irrigation. If you can afford it, fine, you can go ahead. And at the same time, we advise them on getting early maturing seeds.
All right. I must say that is very commendable effort on the part of the FCT, Emergency Management Agency. If you're just joining us, we have been speaking with Florence Menegeme, the Director, the Director Forecasting Response and Mitigation, FCT Emergency Management. Thank you for coming on the news tonight.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a short break. Saturday Discourse continues in a moment.
Every day, life presents hopes, dreams, and challenges. Challenges that can become successes with a little help. Because a little help can empower you to go from despair to celebration. A little help can keep you going until the race is won. A little help can turn bundles of anxiety into a bundle of joy. And with Glow Data, you get much more than just a little help. You get the biggest data deals in town to make every day glow with small wins and big wins. Dial *777# to select your Glow Data plan.
Ya za ku ji idan aka waye gari babu kasar nan, sai hargitsi, zub da jini da kuma yaki a cikin kasar. Ina dole ne mu tashi tsaye don kare kasar mu. Mu koyi warware matsalolinmu ta hanyar tattaunawa, mu taimaka wa jami'an tsaronmu don ganin kasarmu ta kasance a dukkule, dukkanmu ɗaya ne. Mu jinjina wa gwamnatin tarayya don kokarin da take yi don ganin mun kasance kasa ɗaya, al'umma ɗaya. Najeriya kasa ta ce, kasar ku ce, kuma kasar mu ce. Mu dage don ganin mun kasance kasa ɗaya, al'umma ɗaya. Kasancewar mu kasa ɗaya shine zai jawo kwanciyar hankali da kuma abin sha'awa ga duniya. Mu guji abin da zai jawo zubar da jini, yaki da kuma tashin hankali a Najeriya. Kwanciyar hankalinmu shine ci gaban tattalin arzikin Najeriya.
Welcome back. Now, parishioners of St. Matthew Catholic Church and community members of Ushafa have benefited from a free medical outreach courtesy of Sea Development Foundation, a non-governmental organization. Charity Zaka captured the exercise.
You go just say, this man when we know yesterday, they say he just fall. Now, high blood pressure, because that's why it's very important to check your blood pressure. Now, we don't bring out from that.
That was a health talk on personal hygiene to parishioners and community members on how well to keep their environment clean and free from illness. The exercise, which is in collaboration with other sister NGOs, is helping communities with similar outbreak of disease learn the importance of a clean and healthy environment.
We are here today for medical outreach, which is targeted at both communicable and non-communicable disease. Today, beneficiaries will be having screened on malaria, HIV. They will also have their blood group checked. So it's a general counseling for them. At the end of the day, we'll have drugs given to them.
Most times you notice that people do HIV and hepatitis testing and there is no vaccination. Here we have a very good NGO that's also administering the vaccination to people that tested negative. So that way they have protection against it. But they are also counseled on how to live a better life.
People that have problems that needs more checking or anything, they come to our different hospitals. So we'll check their eyes very well with other big equipment.
As a faith-based organization, as a church, we believe that we are made of the body, the soul and spirit. So we don't just take care of the spirit, we also take care of the body. And so these other foundations too are like minds, and so they're collaborating with us to ensure that they bring this to the hinterland where people may not be able to afford even the basics.
Some of the beneficiaries who laud the initiative say they now know better how best to be free from illness.
I'm treated for sight problem, which a free reading eyeglass was provided for me by this program.
Very, very happy for St. Matthew's to bring up this, making sure that the parishioners and even the community per se are safe.
I thank the parish priest, Reverend Father Peter, for giving us this great opportunity to take care of our health so that we can feel better.
Health is said to be wealth. Privileged Nigerians were encouraged to imbibe the habit of extending assistance to the needy. Charity Zaka, NTA News.
Up next, Sports Brief.
The Nigerian Football Federation, NFF, has finalized plans to stage not fewer than 4 international friendlies for the Flying Eagles ahead of the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Argentina. This friendly matches, according to Ladambo, so head coach of the Flying Eagles, was arranged to further blend the team ahead of the FIFA age grade competition. Boso on Friday, after the 5-0 victory over Skylink FC of Jos, revealed that the Flying Eagles will play 2 friendly matches with Niger Republic and Benin Republic before leaving Nigeria for Argentina on May 6th. The 2023 FIFA World Cup will be hosted by Argentina and will commence on 20th May to 11th June 2023. The 2 times finalists, Nigeria, are in the same group with Brazil, Italy and Dominican Republic. Flying Eagles will start their campaign against Dominican Republic before taking on Italy, Brazil in the 2nd and 3rd group games. Meanwhile, the Disciplinary Committee of the Nigerian Football Federation, NFF, on Friday reinstated the 3 points deducted from the total for Remo Stars and Wiki Tories by the Interim Management Committee, IMC, of the Nigerian Premier Football League. The committee, after a sitting during which all available facts and evidence were reviewed, posted that there was no sufficient evidence to support the claim by the center referee Indubisi Uka and the officials in charge of the Wiki Tories vs Bayelsa United. Hence, the 3 points deducted from both clubs were returned. The NFF Disciplinary Committee that was set up a week ago disagreed with IMC on 3 points and 3 goals deduction from Wiki Tories when they hosted Bayelsa United, though the committee affirmed that the fine of 500,000 for throwing stones and objects on the pitch during the matches by the fans was just. With Sports Brief, Wendugu, NTA News.
And that's our time tonight on Saturday Discourse. We sincerely thank you for being with us. Thanks. Have a good evening.